Hi there, I'm Judy Holland, and welcome to Happy Nest, the podcast where you can hear the latest research and best advice for living well when your kids leave home. Join me as I interview experts and explore how to reinvent yourself during this critical passage. I hope you'll head over to judyhollandauthor.com and check out my new book, Happy Nest, Finding Fulfillment When Your Kids Leave Home. I'm here today on the Happy Nest podcast with Xiaomeng Xu, who calls herself Mona and also goes by Professor X because her name is tricky to pronounce. Mona was born in Fuling, China, and immigrated to the United States at age 5. She grew up in New York City, graduated in psychology from NYU, and got her PhD from Stony Brook University. Now she's an associate professor of psychology at Idaho State University. Her research projects include behavioral health, close relationships, especially romantic relationships, and teaching. She's been involved in some really cool neuroimaging research that we'll talk about. I tracked her down when I was writing my book Happy Nest because I was interested in how novel experiences affect close relationships. Welcome to another episode of Happy Nest. I'm here today with Xiaomeng Xu, which is probably a little bit of a slaughtering of Mona's Chinese name, but I'm doing my best. How did I do today, Mona?
Really good.
Really good. So I found Mona a while back when I was researching my book, Happy Nest, and I got really interested in the idea of novelty, experiencing novelty, and the effect that that has on romantic relationships. Mona's done a lot of study on this. Mona, what's the value of novelty or novel experience in a romantic relationship? How can it affect your view of your romantic partner?
That's a great question. So novelty comes into play in a number of ways. One of the most direct ways is particularly in long-term relationships. If you're experiencing a sense of the relationship getting a little stale or you're in a rut, novelty and excitement might be one way to kind of rekindle a spark, get your relationship and how you think about your partner into a more positive perspective. So if you feel like you're in a rut and you know your partner and everything's kind of boring, doing something new and exciting with them can help you remember that, hey, this is someone I really like, and I have a great time when we go out and do something, or even when we stay in, but I discover something new about them that I didn't know before. And also when we do things that are novel and exciting and interesting and challenging, one of the things that happens is our self-concept, who we think of, who we understand ourselves to be, grows. So when we expand our sense of who we are, we feel like we're more able to take on challenges in our lives. We feel like we have more resources, more perspectives, more identities to fall back on. And similarly, that can happen in your relationship too. Because I'm doing novel, exciting things with my partner and learning about them, I'm including them more into my own sense of self.
Okay, well, bring me to mutton busting. When I spoke to you a while ago, you were talking to me about going with your then boyfriend to something that was a little bit like a rodeo. I know you come from New York City and you landed, because of your academics, I believe, in Idaho. So you are really your experience was ripe for novelty and new experiences because you really went to kind of like the opposite place, right?
Right. Yeah. So
tell me about mutton busting and then the effect of that on your relationship. Was that kind of early in your relationship that you guys went to that?
Yeah, it was within the first year of dating. He found out that I had never been to a state fair or any fair really. And so he thought it would be a nice, date to bring me to one, which it was. And so everything was brand new, but especially mutton busting, which I had never really even heard of before. But it's a rodeo event where kids ride sheep. They're all geared up, and usually they just the sheep moves a little and then they kind of fall right off. So it's really adorable. But for me, it was just such a new experience, just being at the fair, being at a rodeo, my first one, and then watching this event. So it was just a really fun way to connect with a partner who, wasn't particularly novel for him, but I think watching me react was very novel.
He probably saw that event through new eyes. Because I'm sure to you, had I seen that, I would have been similarly surprised or shocked or something. But so how can viewing novel events like this make you like your partner better? What's the dopamine effect?
Yeah, so one way this works is because it's a fun and exciting experience. There's dopamine release in the brain, and so you feel a sense of reward. You might also feel motivation to keep doing whatever it is that you're doing because it's bringing you reward. And you're associating with your partner, right? So I'm enjoying this event, but I'm enjoying it in part because I'm sharing it with someone. And so I'm also building a memory where this is someone who brings me joy, and there's a lot of reward in being with them because we have these experiences together. Mm-hmm. And, it's new and exciting, but it's also nice in that when it's built into a memory, you can relive that as many times as you'd like. So I'm getting a little surge just talking about it and thinking, yeah, he was really nice to think of that and bring me to that and really encourage me to explore something that maybe I would have never picked out for myself.
Yeah, no, so help me a little bit with, you're talking to somebody who artfully dodged chemistry starting in high school. I'm not sure how they let me do that, but somehow I slid into literature and out of chemistry. I know that dopamine, and I read everywhere, and I even write that dopamine is the feel-good, I think it's a neurotransmitter, right? Mm-hmm.
And it's a hormone and a neurotransmitter.
A hormone and a neurotransmitter. Okay. And so dopamine, when you get a surge of dopamine, you feel happy or excited, you said, or motivated?
Yeah, so you feel reward, and reward is a complex thing. So in part, it's pleasure, but it could also be motivation in the sense that, I really want this thing. I really want to do something. I want to move towards this goal or something that's going to bring me a reward, even if in and of itself that thing is not particularly pleasurable. Mm-hmm. So one example and one way that dopamine may be tricky is in addictions. So dopamine is prevalent in every substance of abuse, but also in behavioral addictions like gambling. So you might get a dopamine surge when you win at, say, a slot machine, but even just playing it, you might get that surge even if you're not winning in the moment, just because it makes you want to keep going. Right. So that's the motivator reward piece, where even in that moment, if you pulled and you didn't win, but you might still be motivated to keep going because of what's happening dopamine wise.
Okay. I think I read somewhere that likes on Facebook or Instagram, if you see a lot of likes, that there's a little bit of a dopamine hit related to that.
Right. So that is one reason why we might be very attuned to checking to see if this post got likes or not, how many. We might be motivated to curate our social media lives or think about our posts a little more than maybe we need to try to get more likes. And that's one of the reasons why people are talking about, especially for adolescents, should we stop having the likes be so visible, because it does make people sometimes really stressed out about, are they getting enough social approval or not, and focusing a little maybe too much on that.
Right. So let me bring you back to, I think, your days with Arthur Aaron. I know that you worked on MRI neuroimaging of the human brain and scans. Can you explain what these scans you did showed about novel activity and how that affected the brain?
Sure. So MRI is magnetic resonance imaging, and so it is the MRI scanner that many people have been in if they've ever had any part of their body scanned. We focused on scanning the brain, and using functional or fMRI methodology, where we ask people to do a task for us. So we're not just looking at the anatomy, but we're also looking at what is happening in the brain in terms of blood flow. So, where is the blood going, which gives us a proxy sense of which neural areas are activated.
You can see that. You can see where the blood is flowing.
Yes. So you can image using software how much blood is flowing to which directions in the brain and where.
Wow.
And when. So the time course of that.
Okay.
So that's one way we can look at humans, because the deeper structures of the brain, if you wanted to get neural response, you'd have to implant electrodes, and that's a little tough to get participants to agree to, or IRBs to approve you doing that kind of research. So we did scans, a number of studies looking at two things in particular. One was looking at people who were in the early stage, intense, passionate love phase of a relationship. Mm-hmm. So this is when everything is new. You just fall in love and you're just exuberant about this person. So one of the questions we ask people is, what percentage of your waking time do you spend thinking about this person? And often for people in this stage, they'll say something like 100%. I'm always thinking about them. Mm-hmm. And everything is new and exciting about that person.
All novelty all the time.
Right. So the butterflies in the stomach stage. And what we were able to see is that when you have someone who is going through early stage intense passionate love, and you ask them to look at a picture of their partner, and you compare that to what's going on in the brain when they look at a picture of a friend, someone they've known as long as they've known the partner, or an acquaintance. The difference is that when they're looking at the partner, you get a lot more activation in these dopamine regions, in these regions associated with reward. And so that's one of the potential reasons why you feel that rush of excitement and enjoyment in that early stage phase.
Wow. And it just lights up like a Christmas tree in the part of the brain that you, Mona, know is the place for dopamine.
Yes. So there's a dopamine system, and many areas in that system are a lot more active.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, so I've got a question then. If dopamine, if I get involved in a novel activity with my husband, or perhaps someone who isn't my husband, and something that's really brand new, kind of like the mutton busting was for you, just something brand new, unusual, exciting, completely novel, then if let's say I'm not with my husband, I'm with somebody else, can my brain, if I'm all excited about the novelty of this situation, my brain lights up with dopamine, and then I perhaps transfer that or associate that invigorated feeling with the person that I'm with, isn't that like kind of a trick in a way? You know what I mean? I mean, it could be, if I'm doing that with my husband, that's a good thing, I'm sure. But couldn't that be kind of a trick, kind of a deception that makes me think I like someone more than I really do?
Possibly. I mean, it depends a lot on how that relationship works, and how you want it to work, and whether or not you think you're only allowed to have excitement and joy with one person or not. Mm-hmm. And the nature of that excitement. So you could be doing novel things with your kids or your family members that has no romantic aspect to it. And I don't think we would be as concerned about that.
Right.
If you were going on date nights with someone who wasn't your partner, and you and your partner have not agreed that is okay, then potentially that could be an issue.
Then you maybe shouldn't do such novel things, right? Right. But generally speaking, with your kids, with your friends, experiencing novelty is a good idea.
Yeah, as long as it's, so novelty is subjective, right? What's new to me may be boring to someone else. And also you want to make sure it's something that is at least moderately pleasant. So you shouldn't do something new just for the sake of doing it if it's, super frightening for you, or maybe you're so busy and so overwhelmed that adding one more new thing is really just going to be a chore rather than something you could actually enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, I think actually when I spoke to your former teacher, Professor Arthur Aaron, he spoke about engaging in activities that you kind of agreed on, right? That were exciting for both, but if you, like me, were afraid of heights, I have a terrible issue with heights, and
Right.
and so while it would be novel for me to be on the edge of a cliff, on the top of a mountain, there's no way that's gonna evoke any kind of positive emotion from me. I don't think it would be dopamine. I don't know what it would be, but right, that's poison for me.
Yeah, so lots of adrenaline, your heart's going to get racing. And, a little bit of that might be good, but too much of that, if you really are just in a state of fear, then that's not going to be good for you. And if you connect that with your partner, right, your partner forced you to do this thing that you really hate, that's probably not going to be great for the relationship either.
That's not good. Can you think of examples of activities? I mean, we can't all see mutton busting. I'm not sure that I'll ever see that, but types of activities. I mean, those they don't have to be elaborate or expensive, right?
No, they don't. So it could be just as simple as, you have a favorite show together and you agree that, once a week when the new episode comes out, you're going to watch it together and maybe talk about it a little bit.
So that's novel just because you haven't seen that episode before.
Right. And certainly people can be upset at partners for, jumping ahead of shows without them. Right. So you want to negotiate it in terms of when and how you navigate that.
What about, like, I live in Washington, D.C. What about venturing into another part of the city?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just walking around. Again, not a big bucks kind of thing, but maybe there's a part of the city where I haven't been and it's just a nice day, and that would qualify as a novel activity, right?
Right, absolutely. And you can make it as novel as you want it to be. So it could be as simple as we're just going to look around because we've never seen this before. Or you could make it into, a competitive game where you have a scavenger hunt who can find the most historic sites or what have you.
Right.
So you can oscillate the amount of excitement and novelty based on, how you're feeling that day.
Mm-hmm. Or you go skating, or you go to, we had a spell, my husband and I had a spell where we said, okay, every Saturday we're going to go to one of these DC museums. And I think it lasted for 2 Saturdays. But it was very exciting and interesting when we did it. It just somehow that didn't last very long. So
and it doesn't have to last very long. I think typically we're fairly good at modulating our own levels in terms of what we need. So we'll kind of naturally stop doing things when it becomes overwhelming or really unpleasant in any way. It certainly shouldn't be something that is stressful. So if you are stressed out trying to every day I have to think of something brand new and that's just an upsetting experience, then you can back away from that a bit. So that modulation is important, and also checking in with your partner, because if the relationship is going really well and you're not feeling like you're in a rut, you don't need to inject novelty constantly.
Right.
But if you do notice, like, I feel like things are really stale, I notice that I'm seeking novelty and excitement from other sources and I don't want to be doing that, then that's a time to have a conversation about, like, what can we do to make things a little more exciting.
Right, sure. So let's talk about self-growth. I mean, I'm still on the topic of how do we bolster or improve a romantic relationship. And I know that you have done some looking into self-growth and how that might bolster a relationship. Tell me about that. Is this novelty connected?
Yeah, so self-expansion, so positively adding to your own self-concept. One way we do that is through novel activities, but it can also be activities that are exciting, interesting, challenging, without necessarily being novel, although often novelty helps things be exciting. So when we challenge ourselves and do new things that are exciting and challenging and do well at them, we can build our sense of self-efficacy. We can build our identities. As I get better at doing a certain activity, let's say I'm learning a skill, I actually start identifying more as a person who has that skill. Right? So if I'm learning to cook, maybe over time I think about myself more as a chef or a baker or what have you. My sense of who I am, that self-concept, is growing. And that's really helpful in a lot of ways, including in terms of our own sense of well-being. So if who I am is quite large and it covers a number of domains because I have a lot of identities, a lot of perspectives and resources, I have a lot of people I've included into my own self-concept, I have this buffer against negative things that are happening. So I should be able to handle challenges a little bit better. That is helpful for mental health and well-being, and also having more positive relationships with others.
So, yeah. So adding things like, I think I don't know, probably 15 years ago decided that I wanted to be a photographer. And I got the equipment and I started to figure it out, and I started standing on the fields and I started playing with light and asking other photographers questions. And before long, I became the photographer. And I think that's an example. That's something I'd wanted to do for a long time. And that's a form of self-growth that then I think I used to come back really excited about, oh my gosh, show my husband, my kids, look at this picture, look what I got, look at the way the light is, look how I've improved that. That then just adds verve to you, right? And fun. And then that is contagious, I think, to the people around you.
Right, absolutely. So it can be really lovely to interact with someone who is excited about life and has things going on, and also a very clear sense of who they are and what their skills are and what they can and can't do. I did want to say, because you mentioned that was something that you did a while ago, so another way that you can self-expand is you can also do rediscovery of the self. So it doesn't have to be completely novel, but there is some data to suggest that sometimes, especially with relationships, as people's lives change, they stop doing a certain hobby or they stop thinking about themselves in a certain way. So for example, if you don't do as much photography anymore, maybe you don't identify as much as being the photographer. So one thing you could do is you could decide, you know what, I want to revisit that. I want to start doing that again and rediscover that piece of myself, that identity that maybe is not as strong anymore. And this kind of self-growth can also be really helpful, particularly for people making transitions in relationships. So there's some good research on breakups where for people who engage in this rediscovery of the self, they transition much better. They have better outcomes in terms of handling that breakup time. Particularly if the relationship was actually not great in the sense of it was holding them back from self-growth. So getting out of a relationship that's keeping you from growing as a person, it actually is quite positive.
Yeah. I think we spoke about, didn't we talk about this bake-off before, when there was some great bake-off, right? What was this bake-off that you
the Great British Bake-Off?
Yeah, talk to me about that. I remember that was an interesting. What was the story of the Great British Bake-Off?
I think maybe that was an example of a show that my partner and I really enjoy, and so we just get very excited about every time there's a new series because it's just a fun show to watch. It's a competitive show, but it has just lovely people, and it's not.
Is it grown-ups trying to bake something better than the other one?
Yes, so it's a competition for baking, open to adults in Great Britain, and you have these lovely interactions that you see because nobody's really that competitive. Everyone actually really helps each other and is really nice to each other.
Right.
And you also get to see these interactions between very diverse people of all ages, really young, really old, different levels of experience with baking, making things that are just breathtaking.
Do some people make things that really bomb?
Yes, and you feel it, right? When someone accidentally drops something or something doesn't work, you really feel for them.
So that's something that both of you, I think you had said before that if one was interested in it, but the other one made snarky remarks or complained you were, wasting your time if you were baking something, that would be a negative thing. But anyway, you two both watch this, and it's new. It's a novelty. It's new every time.
Right, especially when a new series comes out. And we will sometimes even save up episodes for a special occasion or a vacation or something like that.
Are you trying to bake these things too, or are you just watching other people bake them?
We are just watching other people bake. We've talked about trying, but neither of us is a baker, so it would take quite a bit of studying up on how to do it. We've also talked about, would it be a good idea for one of us to be really good at baking very high caloric things and have them in the house?
Maybe that's not what you want. Right. Let's talk about the Michelangelo phenomenon. I remember you and I talking about how you can help your partner chisel themselves into who they want to be, something like that. Help me with that.
Yeah, so the Michelangelo phenomenon, a number of great relationship researchers, including the late, great Carol Rusbolt, have studied this. It's the idea that in an ideal relationship, you are like the sculptor Michelangelo, who's helping to free the form from the stone, right? So you have this slab of rock. It's a quote attributed to him where essentially he was saying, you just kind of chisel away everything that's not whatever is meant to be.
It's already in there.
Right, and you're just freeing it and helping to free it. So the idea with that phenomenon in relationships is ideally what we're doing is we're really understanding our partner. So we're able to be vulnerable and really authentic with our partner and let them know, here's who I am, here's the slab of rock I am right now, and here's where I want to be. Then having that partner help us reach that ideal self. So who it is that I want to be, my partner is helping to sculpt me to get me there. And that's tricky because oftentimes in relationships, you might be interested in changing your partner in a way that maybe is not how they want to be.
Oh.
And so it's really understanding what is it that your partner ideally wants to be and how can I help them reach that, even if maybe that's not my ideal for them, assuming their ideal is not something negative.
Yeah. So maybe I need more discipline to do something, right? And I'd like my partner to help me to get that discipline, or at least not distract me from the task, right? That's the idea?
Right, absolutely. So if they know, you have this goal, what are their day-to-day actions that they can do to help you reach that goal, or at least get out of your way if their helping is maybe not super helpful, and to encourage you if that's what you need, or to maybe give you some constructive feedback if that's what you need.
So do you have a deal like that with you and your new husband?
That's interesting. I don't know if we've explicitly talked about it, but I certainly think he helps me be a better person every day. And he's very good at helping me live in line with my values, which includes trying to be a good person and teacher and all these sorts of things, and also to practice self-compassion. So that's something I've been trying to do more and to model for my students and colleagues. And that's tough because there's a part of me that's always feeling guilty that I'm not working every second. And
right.
So
isn't that how you get a PhD? You work every second. Yeah, I understand that. And then it's the Buddhist concept of self-compassion that we need to roll in, because we can really beat ourselves up, and after a while we reach a point of negative returns, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So he's very good at helping me when I'm, in that mode of beating myself up, or, reminding me to take breaks, reminding me to celebrate my successes rather than just, moving on to the next thing. Reminding me, what's important, right? Do I need to answer this email at, 10 p.m. or can it wait until tomorrow? And almost always the answer is it can wait, even though it doesn't feel that way.
Yeah, no, I get it. It takes one to know one. I have the same problem. So wrapping up, Mona, tips. What tips do you have? My audience is mainly people in the second half of life, primarily empty nesters. Do you have any tips with regard to novelty to engaging in things. How do we improve? I know you're a student of close relationships. What do you think, just off the top of your head, I'm blindsiding you here, what advice would you give for improving your empty nest relationship?
Yeah, I think, the first thing to do is to just really have a open, honest dialogue with your partner and sort of see where they are, and also talk through where you're at and understand that you might both be at different places, right? So one of you might feel like, I don't know what to do with myself. Everything's so boring now. I need more events or more interaction. And the other person might feel like, this is great. Like I can finally relax and enjoy life. And so you want to negotiate whether or not, should you do more things together, or if there's some discrepancy where one of you wants to do more things and the other doesn't, how can one person go out and do those new things, and then the other person maybe is very supportive of that, helps them find things to do, encourages them, and so forth. It's also a time to think about, who are you now? If this is a new stage in life, maybe you want to rediscover some of who you were before the kids were in the picture, right? So that was the last time you had an empty nest, was pre-nest. So, are there things from that time that you want to revive and try out again? If so, now might be a great time to do that.
Right. We have
the sky's the limit at this point, right?
Right. Absolutely. And truth be told, there's a lot of data that shows this really can be the very best phase of life. It's just a little bit of a jolt, and it's a big transition. And I think it's before you're in it is probably the scariest time, But certainly, as you mentioned, communication is a hugely important part of any relationship, and especially at this time of life.
Right. And to understand that, that jolt can be different for different people. So there is no correct way to feel, or, a checklist of here's what you have to do at this time. So really to be kind to yourself and your partner as you navigate that. Maybe you'll try something and it'll be a great fit, or you try something and you realize, ooh, I thought I would really like that and I don't. That's okay. You can feel however you feel, and you may both feel very differently.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I've appreciated your time, and it's really nice to reconnect with you again and remember the mutton busting and everything else we spoke about back in the early days of my book.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, and I will be back in touch with you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning into my Happiness podcast, where we explore how to get the best out of the empty nest. I hope you'll subscribe, write a review, and reach out to me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Check out my website, judyhollandauthor.com. Have a great day, and remember, make it happen.